the complete story in a little bit, but my favorite from when I was 3 years old, I kid you not, I remember being in the bedroom with my mom, WCW Saturday night, 1993, and I see Sting come out wearing neon face paint and the blonde haircut, and he comes out, and I said, Mom, he's my favorite wrestler. And since then, I followed him through the Crow period. I followed him through everything.
I thought the Crow period was a little weird.
It was a little strange, but at the same time, it had almost a Batman aura about it.
Sure.
And it was somewhat like that. They really went south with a few things, especially after Starrcade '97. But the build of that match, for the most part,
just always
very,
felt
very
that,
good.
like, when we were at WCW, there was no 6-month year arc on any of the storylines.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, oh, what are we going to do now? And it was sort of maybe not thought out as well as it could have been worked.
Yeah.
And I've never worked for the WWE, but where they have like a 6-month, a 12-month, and where they see themselves next week.
Right.
But we were doing so high on the ratings that I don't think anybody put like a long-term.
Yeah, they thought we're getting getting by fine with the week to week.
Funny thing with Sting is I was in. It was Chattanooga, Tennessee, where they did the fake Sting with the NWO.
Yeah. Jeff Farmer, I believe his name was. Yeah,
he's a really good guy too. And the people there, I thought they were going to be mad. I mean, they weren't happy. It was like they were in awe, like just shocked that this was happening.
And it seemed like Sting was really turning.
Because it really did look like Sting when they did it, and the way that they had it. I mean, you almost were like, wow, that's Sting. But the people were just such and I remember I was like Brad Armstrong, and we were in the locker room, we saw it, and Brad's like, we got to get out of here before they tear this place apart.
Right.
And they just were almost like their dog had died when they left.
I remember 6 years old crying when the NWO gave him a T-shirt and said, "Here, join us," and he was thinking it over. At that point, I was crying at 6 years old. I didn't know it was going to happen
when
next
Hogan
week.
left. Everyone sort of saw that writing on the wall, and I was in Japan at the time, so I didn't get to see it live. But when Sting did it, especially in the South, he'd been here the whole entire time. It was such.
People saw him face Flair at Clash of the Champions and become a star.
That was their homegrown boy. And it was a trip that, they did that. It's really good, too. They kept that really secret, too, so no one knew about it. It was really good.
Let's see here. What were your opinions? This is kind of a long question, so bear with me here. What were your opinions of Scott Raven Levy before you entered the flock? And when were you told that you were becoming part of the flock?
I had known that Scotty was coming down here, and I had seen him on some independents here in Georgia, and then I saw him with WWE when he was Scotty Flamingo, and then when he went to ECW. ECW when they first started and they were doing that, I'm talking 95.
Yeah.
And they had that Saturday night show. The stuff they were doing was cutting edge. It was always, but the problem was that everyone else started doing it.
Exactly.
So sort of got knocked down,
watered down.
Yeah. But I thought it was great. They had some really good storylines, and some, if you look back at that stuff, it's
it was actually
really
good.
And
it was almost
really
pearls before swine in some ways. Some of the fans just really couldn't appreciate it.
Yeah, they did a lot of that crazy violence, but the storylines were really good.
Yeah.
And so when he came down here, there was always talk about me joining the flock. The one thing that was they didn't want me to join in the beginning, so I don't know what that was all about. But then, once I sort of got in with them, it was cool because all those guys had sort of their defined spots and what they were doing. And I was sort of more like, the henchman, the guy that put the smack on him. And, it was good because I got to work with Perry Saturn, who, he was a great wrestler. And,
oh, yeah.
He was totally ready to get out of the flock and wasn't doing his own stuff. And he sort of got a little sidetracked towards the end, I think, a little bit, but just some crazy stuff.
I gotcha. What was it like working with Raven, and who were your buddies within the flock?
Believe it or not, the flock got along pretty good. It's just tough being with the same 30 to 40 guys so much because it's you get there at 10 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're there till 9 o'clock at night. And so it's just gets old. But I think everyone on the flock we were pretty good friends. we might not have seen each other on a social basis afterwards, but that was just because we've seen so much.
What were your opinions of, first of all, Raven? Like, what was, like, not just the character, but Scott and how the two actually meshed together? Because they are almost completely different.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's sort of become like his gimmick now, which, I know he's had some medical problems, and I just hope and wish him the best. He wasn't a bad guy. Yeah, the Flock, we were like the hottest thing out there. We were doing, great. It was just that there's a lot of people in upper management on the upper card that didn't want to see us down there because they knew we were really pushing. And I remember we were somewhere and Lodi was there and he had the signs going. And, Lodi wasn't a bad wrestler. Lodi just wasn't a great wrestler. He just hadn't had the ring time yet, And those guys, Lodi would stand up, the whole place would start yelling, you suck.
He got major heat.
And these guys in the back were all so mad because, this guy's getting, heat. And, he's not even doing anything. It's cheap heat. It's cheap heat, but there's no such thing as cheap heat. It's just heat, They got really mad about that. I think that, we sort of got, they had ideas about, killing us a little prematurely and dragging it out. So, I don't know. It is what it is, but it was, it was fun while it lasted.
Well, another thing about the Flock, just coming to think of this, is a lot of people have brought up the fact that, they never really capitalized on the Flock when it comes to the third wheel of the faction war in WCW, because they could, imagining Raven actually either team up or take on the NWO, and WCW being like, what in the world are you guys doing? You're the misfits. That could have been interesting one way or the other. So, what are your opinions on
I don't think
the
any of those older upper guys wanted to do any of the hardcore stuff, so I think that was out. But that would have been really good too. It was like the NWO was their own entity. They were doing whatever they wanted to do. It's almost like we were an undercard, but we were mid-card guys doing what, just getting along, trying to get the scraps that they didn't have. And, we were in the middle. We pushed Goldberg up to the top, which was cool. Bill was really cool about it. Bill's a good guy. He was a good guy then. I'm sure he's still a good guy now, but it's just, we pushed guys up and then, the rest of the guys is there coming down. So, it is what it is.
One of the things, that interested me, and I always wanted to see it, and I still want to see it today if they can do it somehow without too much ring time, because both Sting and Raven are getting up there, and physically too, they're losing it a little bit. But I've always wanted to see Crow, Sting, and Raven. I've always wanted to see that because
with face paint.
Yeah, because Sting, he's got such a different persona, and what would have happened in WCW had some of you guys say Kidman started getting a little bit too obsessed with Sting and started following Sting instead of Raven. Something like that happening. So Kidman talking about defecting to WCW.
Yeah.
That sort of a thing. That's a possibility.
One thing I always wondered about was what if they had someone stand up to the NWO and just be like, hey, I'm a Christian. And I don't believe in, all the violence. Black and all the, that stuff,
Then you go light.
Because, there's a lot of Christian wrestling fans out there. There's a lot of, Christian faction out there just as, individuals,
Yep.
So I thought that might have been something that they missed out on. And, there's a lot of guys in the locker room that were pretty Christian. I saw that Shawn Michaels did that sort of a while ago,
Yeah.
And they went with it, but never really fully.
Well, the thing that happened was I think Vince McMahon couldn't pull himself to really, I don't know of a term for it. It's not buried, but actually go under in the storyline, because he did eventually lose, but the pinnacle of the storyline was him beating Shawn Michaels with himself being the father, and then Shane McMahon being the son, and then they had the Holy Spirit swap. So that was just kind of like, no one cared about Shawn winning after that because it was the pinnacle of the feud.
Yeah.
So it was just, let's see, what do they tell you?
It's also very easy to say you're Christian, but to especially when you're on the road, live the gimmick is tough.
And I think fans have missed the boat on that, and that's one thing.